Quantum 7 25 40. That was the phone number for Kathy Brennan in the 1950s, and she lived in the Bronx, which was across the Harlem River from where I lived in Inwood. But a lot of people used to come to Inwood because of the handsome boys, I guess, and also it was all of the bars, and a girl brought her over there, and they were in a pizza place, and Dan Sheehan, who was a close friend, and I met them for the first time, and we talked for a while, and then we went outside, and they went home, and Dan said to me, "Gee, I wish I had gotten her phone number because she has really impressed me." And I said, "Here it is. I've got it." I'd obtained it surreptitiously, and I realized that he was smitten with her. So I gave him the phone number, and he called her. Then less than 4 years later, they were married. And and it started out the way that many people start their marriage in New York. They started a family, and Dan was working for the bank in Lower Manhattan, very normal. And I picked him up in a car to drive him home a number of times because I was coming from Brooklyn. I used to come through the Battery Tunnel. And on the Friday night, I stopped to pick him up. Then he said, "Roll down the window." He said, "Park the car." He said, "I'm going to have a farewell drink with these fellows. I have to be in Newport, Rhode Island, Monday morning because I've been accepted into Navy OCS." So we did that, and his wife was expecting, but he was off to Newport, and that began them moving up and down around the United States while he was in the Navy. Then when his tour finished, instead of going back to the bank, he went to IBM, and he once again seemed to be returning to normalcy. First, he had an apartment in Dutchess County, and then a house in Newburgh, New York. But then IBM offered him the opportunity to go to Taiwan to supervise some manufacturing. So he and his wife were off to Taiwan with their youngest daughter, and from then he moved to Data General in Singapore, and to Commodore, and then started his own manufacturing business, manufacturing in China and in Taiwan, and returned to the United States. And unfortunately, Kathy had a back and a leg problem, as did another woman who was in my wedding party, and it was one of these things that was never properly diagnosed. And she went to the doctors in Florida and in New Jersey and in New York, and it was still constant pain, but you'd never know it because she was very cool and calm. And the last time I spoke to her was about a month ago, and I happened to call Dan, and he wasn't home, and we spoke for a good while about the chipmunks on our property. And then I asked her at the end, "And how are you feeling?" And she told me that it's still not working, and she's not feeling well. She wasn't looking for sympathy. She was answering the question, and she died last week. And I will be at the wake this afternoon, and I'll be talking tomorrow after the funeral. And she was a class act. You never knew there was anything wrong with it unless you asked. She raised 3 children. She traveled all over the world. She was active in the community, and she was just a very good person. And I will miss her. And I know how her husband, who was my 2-time best man and a very close friend, is going to have a very hard time from now on. Thank you for listening.